Hey guys, this is Jan for Chess24, and in this video I'm gonna be taking a look at the game Iljiushenok against Pavel Iljanov, played in the first round of the European Individual Championship. This is kind of a typical battle you sometimes see in Opens or in team championships, where one player is much higher rated as the black pieces, but the player with white is also highly qualified, and therefore it's a tricky balance for the black player what amount of risk he wants to take. On the black side we have Mr. Pavel Iljanov. Here we got a picture. Used to be a top 10 player, rated around 2750 in his best lists. Two-time Olympic champion with Ukraine. So he's a very strong player, still rated way above 2700. And the white player is a player I have to admit I wasn't familiar with. Iljiushenok, 22 years old, is playing the move 1e4. This is a first round matchup, the European Individual Championship. It's a very, very strong tournament. Not for the absolute top guys normally, but for the second tier, 26 till 27, 30, 40, 50 guys, they frequent it because you can qualify for the World Cup. First 23 players, I believe, qualify for that World Cup, which not only can be your next step to the World Championship, but there's also decent money to be made if you survive the first couple rounds. So guys are very motivated to qualify for that one. Iljanov, of course, wants to win with black and chooses the move c5, which conventional wisdom, and I think it's right in this case, says is a better winning attempt than 1e5. Which Iljanov plays a lot as well. c5, knight f3, e6. Once again, to my mind, this is the most combative move actually, because if you play d6, white can play bishop b5 check, Magnus Carlsen style, which is very solid. Well, if you play knight c6, white can play the move bishop b5 once again, which is a very solid move. Or the move knight c3, also a solid move. So e6 is, in a way, the most uncompromising move black has here. d4 takes, and knight to c6, knight c3, queen to c7, so-called Taimanov variation, which, believe it or not, I played throughout my whole junior years before I started becoming more boring and play e4, e5 all the time. Bishop e3, a6, queen to d2 is all the rage here, the English attack kind of setup, planning long castles. But Iljiushenok plays a move that is also perfectly natural, bishop d3, intending to castle kingside, and then go f4. Knight f6 is the main line, castles, and a move that might surprise you a little bit, but once again, it is the main line, the move knight to e5. This move threatens knight e4, so it might win back the tempo it just lost, but apart from knight e4, the knight also keeps an eye on c4, where it would like to jump. Sometimes you want to take on d3, but more rarely, because after c d3, white would strengthen the center, and after queen takes d3, he would speed up his development. So knight takes d3, not a big idea. Iljiushenok plays a move I'd never seen before, the move queen to d2. Main move here is the move h3, just stopping knight g4. When in my days, I played a line like bishop c5, normally I played king h1, d6, f4, knight g6. Black had an alright position. I'm assuming the assessment has not changed all that much here. While another modern move is the move knight to f3 here, which looks quite confusing, but was not tried this time around. Queen d2, not a bad idea, because after knight eg4, white just goes bishop f4, e5 no good, bishop g3. This pawn is pinned. So this is a fairly natural move, stopping black's threat. In some lines it has a small drawback. The queen doesn't always have to be ideal on d2. Sometimes it wants to go to f3 or even d3 later. That's certainly a playable move which has hardly been seen before. Iljanov had a think here, could not come up with anything better than the move d6, just continuing development. When now white played h3, bishop e7 and f4. Knight to c4 is consistent. Here with the bishop locked in, knight g6 doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So knight c4, grabbing the two bishops is a logical move. Bishop c4, queen c4, However, these two bishops, which are nice long-term, also come at the price of giving white a short-term initiative because of his lead in development, and Iljiushenok doesn't waste any time, goes for the move e5, which Eljanov answers with knight d5. Not sure about knight d5, d, e, f, e, knight d7 also makes a lot of sense, attacking this pawn and hoping to survive the white onslaught on the f-file, which it looks like white doesn't have anything better than bishop f4, for example. When after castles or b5, the position is quite unclear. But yeah, I've shown knight d5, knight to e4. Not sure about knight e4. There's also the option of takes, takes, and here the computer gives the very interesting move c4, queen takes c4, e takes d, bishop d6, and knight to f5. Nice little trick when white has, at the very least, full compensation for the c-pawn, which he just sacrificed after ef, queen takes d6, or bishop f8, knight d6. So we see already Eljanov was taking some small liberties in the opening in order to make the position more complicated, which is what what a lot of guys do when facing a must-win or very much want-to-win situation. If you play the Berlin and play a correct game, sometimes you get a lot of opportunities. The knight d5, knight e4, he can't complain about the position not being sharp enough. It is quite dangerous for black too, however. Knight takes e3, queen takes e3. You could also argue about knight e3, but that was the idea of knight d5 to secure the two bishops against two knights situation, which is what he got. Knight e3, queen e3, d, e, f, e. Once again, long term, black is quite fine, but the white knights in the center are very active, and the black king could run into some trouble with his pawn on e5 spearheading some attacks. Bishop d7, wisely not castling yet. If you castle here, I think rook f4 was quite unpleasant. Playing rook f1, rook g4, the white attack can get quite serious very quickly. So bishop d7, kind of a slow move though, showing something might have gone a little bit wrong for black. Rook a d1, very logical as well, occupying this open d-file. And once again, black can't really castle. If you castle here, knight f6 check is tremendously strong. Gf, ef, queen g5 check, threatening checkmate. So black has to give the piece back with bishop f6, rook f6, and he's just worse because his king feels a bit exposed. So Eljanov found the best move, queen to c7, and here I think Iljiushenok did not find the best move. He defended his e5 pawn with the move queen f4, but that looks slightly out of sync with his rook on f1, and after castles defending the f7 pawn, looks like black should be doing all right. Alternatives were, for example, knight d6 check, bishop d6 ed, let's say queen b6. You can't take, I think, because knight f5 asks some annoying questions. Queen b6, play a position like this, probably slightly better for white, but not clear. Or the move I like, knight to b3, when after queen takes e5, white has the nice little trick, rook d7, king d7, and knight ec5, and he wins in all lines, believe it or not. You probably believe it, right? So queen f4 was played, castles, c3. Another move that strikes me as a little bit slow, maybe rook d3 was a better bet. Once again, trying to bring this rook into the attack ASAP. c3, rook a d8, extremely logical as well, the rook occupying the open file. Now rook d3 was played. Here, black is in time to play the move f6, surely intending to simplify before the white attack catches any more steam. I'm sure Eljanov was quite happy with the situation here, expecting something like ef, queen f4, rook f4, gf6, with a fantastic endgame for black. Two bishops, pawns in the center. This is very close to technically winning for black already. But Iljiushenok had no such intentions and found a very nice trick here, which I believe Eljanov did not see coming from afar. He went for the move knight takes f6 check, piece sacrifice. Now black could have and should have declined the sacrifice by going bishop takes f6, ef, queen f4, rook f4 and g f6, which is less appealing than the other line where black still had the bishop against the knight, but it's still an ending that is alright for black. I would slightly prefer black even here, who has an extra central passed pawn. The king is not really weak anymore. So this was certainly playable, even though white maintains very decent chances of holding this position. But instead, Eljanov probably could not quite see the point of his opponent's knight sacrifice and just went g f6. But here comes the point. Rook g3 check. This will not have been a surprise. King to h8. And now a fantastic move by Iljiushenok, which is really the reason why I'm showing you this game, because I like this move a lot. The move rook to g7. Now if there was a black pawn on g7, you'd probably spot this move. Rook takes g7, but to just occupy an empty square there, I find quite pleasing to the eye. And this move is very, very strong. Not only attacks the bishop, but it threatens queen h6 followed by queen h7 checkmate. And of course it uses the fact that king takes g7 runs into e takes f6 with a discovered attack on the black queen. So some very cute idea, which of course you had to see from very far away when he went for this knight takes f6. And I think it escaped Eljanov's attention, else it's not clear why he would go for this. After rook g7, black only has one way to stay in the game, which Eljanov finds. It's the move f takes e5. Everything else, including queen e5, is answered by queen h6 and queen h7 and checkmate. Here, black could try queen e4, but then knight f5 is another very big problem. So f e5 was forced, queen h6, rook takes f1 check, king takes f1. Black better keep giving checks because else queen h7 would be the last check of the game. So he does bishop b5 check. The alternative was the move queen c4 check, would also objectively not save the game. King g1, queen to d3, stopping queen h7. But now white just plays rook takes e7, threatening queen g7, checkmate, or queen f6. So black would have to go for queen g6, when white has a very pleasant choice between rook takes h7, queen f6, and then take this rook with check, or just going for the ending with queen g6, hg, knight f3, both of which look winning to me. So Eljanov no doubt spotted that and therefore went for the alternative bishop b5 check. And here is where Iljiushenok could have put the game in the bag by just calculating a few moves. He played king g1, but what he should have done is play the move king e1. When black has a choice, he can play bishop d3, defending this pawn, but that runs into knight takes e6, and it's game over because queen d6 is met with rook takes h7, bishop h7, queen g7, checkmate. Alternative, which was better, but not much better after king e1, is the move bishop h4 check, but once again, geometry is white's friend after queen h4. King g7 does not work, since knight takes e6 check attacks quite some things. So you have to play queen g7, but now white just goes queen takes d8 check, picks up this rook, queen g8, take it, and the easiest is knight takes b5, simplify. This pawn ending is just totally winning. Material is equal, but if you look at the black pawns, this will not come as a surprise. One sample line, it's really hard to screw up here with white. It's just game over, something like this, and black is in Zugzwang. He has to give up his e5 pawn, and the game would be lost. Instead, Iljiushenok either missed something in this line or thought he was winning more comfortably with the move king g1, but that was the wrong assumption. Bishop d3 was played now, stopping the mate on h7 with queen h7. Knight takes e6, and here's where we see the difference between king g1 and king e1. Now with the king on g1, black has a check. And of course he gives it queen b6 check, king to h1. Could also be that Iljiushenok calculated till here and thought this is just winning for white. Rook h7 followed by queen g7, checkmate is still a threat, e7 is hanging. But turns out black has to play only moves, but now he does have only moves that keep him in the game. The first one of those is a move bishop f8, controlling the g7 square, so eliminating the threat of rook h7 and queen g7, and using the fact that knight f8 is very well met by queen takes h6. Still, not the end of the story, since white has the move queen f6, which once again looks crushing, threatening to move the rook with checkmate. Black is absolutely forced here to give up his queen. However, he is lucky enough that he's picked up enough material for it. After queen takes e6, he will get a rook and two bishops, which is more than enough. However, Iljiushenok plays the clever move rook g8 check. After king g8, queen takes e6 check. He manages to win the e5 pawn with check and then give some more checks. King g7, queen e5, king f7, queen c7, bishop e7, queen b7. So white has a queen and, let me count, 3 pawns against rook and 2 bishops. I believe that only black can win this. This army of rook and 2 bishops should always be able to, at the very least, hold the balance, and in many cases to create an attack against the white king, because it's not only the powerful bishop pair and the rook, they work together very well. White only has one major piece left. However, that major piece is the queen, and the black king, of course, is quite exposed as well. So objectively, my best guess is that white can hold this position with careful play, but in practical play, you take black any day of the week. And of course, let's not forget, Eljanov is around, I didn't calculate, 300 points high rated? No, a little less, 273 points high rated, so he's a heavy favorite from the get-go. Rook d6, keeping his a6 pawn guarded. Bishop f6, c4, the computer did not like the move c4, prefers a4 instead, and says white is slightly better. As I mentioned, I don't believe him. I believe only black can be better, but of course it would be impossible to win such a position against the computer. c4, bishop takes c4, queen h5 check. That was the idea of c4. Now if the king would defend his h-pawn, that would be king g4 check. This bishop would drop. So the king doesn't, goes on a little trip. King e6, queen g4, king d5, queen f5, king c6, queen c8, king d5, queen f5, bishop e5. We see Eljanov is playing for a win, does not want to repeat moves with king c6. Goes for bishop e5 instead. b3, bishop b5, queen takes h7. White still has his 3 pawns, but the main problem here is the king. Rook f6, threatening checkmate with rook f1, g4, very logical, eliminating that threat. Rook f2, keeping the king locked in on the back rank. g5, so far Iljiushenok has been defending well. This is time trouble, so there's some accidental chances here. Rook h1, king g2, rook takes a2 is what the computer is asking for, with probably a winning position for black. Instead, Eljanov played the move bishop c6, also short on time. King g1, good move, stepping out of this diagonal. Bishop d4. But we can already see that these black pieces are very, very strong, and it's not going to be easy for white to create distractions. Queen g8, king d6, queen d8, bishop d7. There's no perpetual here. Queen b8 would be met by, I have to think, maybe there is a perpetual. King e7, I was going to say, but that runs into queen b4 check. So black would have to go king d5. Probably he can run out of the checks, but it might have been worth giving some more of those. Instead, king h1 was played. Now the idea is to keep this bishop pinned to stop it getting to c6 whenever possible. Rook e2, queen f8 check, king c7, queen f7, rook f2, queen e7, rook c2. Eljanov was trying different things. G6, bishop c5, that was the idea of rook c2. And here is where white goes wrong. It's always much easier to criticize these mistakes with computer assistance, of course. After queen f7, which looks very logical, keeping this bishop pinned, there is rook takes rook to f2, and white no longer manages to keep his queen active, pinning this bishop and allowing it to enter the action when needed. Instead, he should have tried queen e5 check, which apparently gives black better chances, white better chances, because after bishop d6, queen g7, this bishop left this very dangerous diagonal, while after, let's say, king b7, the queen goes back to g7, pinning this guy, keeping black busy. So instead, white played the move queen f7, and after rook f2, turns out there is nothing white can do anymore. Queen g7 was played. Turns out I can't speak anymore either. King to d6, and here we see the white dilemma. No more checks. This pawn on g6 is not a big asset. It even blocks potential checks that the white queen could give, while black is just planning to go bishop c6 check and start checkmating operations. b4, trying to distract this bishop, just goes away. Bishop b6, queen h6, bishop c6, king g1, and bishop d5, another nice move, just calmly maintaining the position. There was not a forced mate yet. But after bishop d5, white is still pretty helpless, and the one big point, of course, is white goes g7 check here, which looks quite natural. Black goes rook f6, which also happens to be check. Now this bishop controls this diagonal, and this rook picks up this queen. Say king h2, rook takes h6, and it's quite useful that white cannot even get a new queen. So that's the point of bishop d5. Very nice move. a4 was played. Bishop to d4, centralizing. Now really threatening mate. White is just hopelessly lost. Let's show a neutral move, b5. It's quite a nice mechanism how to deliver the mate here. Deliver mate. Rook a1 check, king f1, bishop c4, king e1, bishop c3, king d1, bishop b3, king c1, and rook a1 checkmate. Shows quite nice teamwork between the two bishops and the rook. Instead, white played the move after bishop d4, queen to g7, and resigned at the same time, because you don't have to take the queen immediately. You can go rook g2 check, king f1, and now bishop takes g7 when no further comment is needed. So Eljanov managed to live up to his role as a favorite, but he had to dodge quite some bullets. The biggest one after bishop b5 check, white could just have won with king e1. There would have been no way out. Very nice game by Iljiushenok, especially the star move. Rook g3, king h8, rook to g7, but he did not manage to seal the deal, and Pavel Eljanov wins his first round game at the European Individual Championship. Thank you guys for watching this video, for paying attention. I'll see you soon in the next one. See you then, everybody. Bye.